Electronic shifting is becoming more and more the norm in the higher end bikes, and to be honest, it's not something I've been really stoked about. I can see its value and where it would come in useful, but for me, a person with a very average bike budget, it just seems exorbitant. Looking at a system like SRAM Access, the rear derailleur alone costs $700. That is just for the rear derailleur. Doesn't include the shifter and all the other bits that you actually need to make it work. But beyond the price, let's just say money was no objects. One of my other hesitations with going full-on electronic shifting is that it kind of locks you into a system. Most of those component groups only work with hydraulic brakes, and you guys know I still love cable actuated disc brakes. They're easier to maintain. I can very quickly move them from bike to bike without wearing gloves and getting all sorts of fluids and all that stuff. So from the bike maintenance perspective, also not a fan. Another reason I've been really hesitant to go into electronic shifting is that you're pretty much locked into that single derailleur. And if the system that you buy into doesn't have the tooth capacity to run the crankset and chainring setup that you want, then you're kind of SOL. There's far less hacky options in the electronic shifting world. That is, of course, until today, that is what's in this box. So what we've got here is an electronic shifting system from the brand Archer Components. Yes, they sent it over to review on the channel, but I think if it does what I hope it does, I will probably end up buying it and running it on one of my bikes. So why am I stoked about this as opposed to Di2 or SRAM Access? Well, this is kind of a hybrid electronic shifting system. And by that, I mean there is a wireless button that controls some kind of motor that actuates a shift. But how it works is you attach the motor part to whatever pre-existing derailleur you already have. So theoretically, this can turn any bike into an electronic shifting bike. If you've got a 3-speed and you want to turn that into an e-shifting bike, you can do it with this system, at least theoretically. That's one of the reasons I asked them to send this over, is that we can do all sorts of weird hacky stuff with their shifting system. So all that said, let's get into it. What we have in the box here, we've got some fun Archer stickers. Really stoked that they sent this over. I know that they get tons of requests, but I think for me, this is an electronic system I am authentically excited about. So they offer two versions now. This is their D1X Trail. They do have a integrated road version, but it only works with a very particular TRP set of brakes. And I wanted the most flexible system because I plan to put this on different bikes. So yes, this is the mountain bike version, but hopefully they also include the drop bar conversion kit. That way I can put this both on flat bar bikes as well as drop bar bikes. And I think going this route would give you the maximum in terms of flexibility and hackiness, cave a bad idea style. So again, this is the Trail D1X. So this is the actual shifting pod itself. It's basically two buttons, one goes up, one goes down. And it's supposed to be highly programmable in terms of the number of shifts, but also the individual cable pull within each shift. So that's another reason why I'm super stoked on this system. And this looks like this is the Paul adapter currently on it. Paul right here, and this is spaced out for 31.8. So I know for some people this is not the ideal setup. You know, you'd prefer to have it at the actual braking mechanism. But again, I wanted the most flexible system so I could put it on both drop bar bikes and flat bar bikes, and this system will do it. You could get creative. I mean, there are holes here. I could theoretically create some kind of band and put it closer to the brakes if you wanted, but we'll see. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's all about experimentation. Okay, what do we got here? A little box of batteries. So some Archer branded AA batteries. I'm assuming that these are rechargeable. Yes, rechargeable batteries. And we've got some bands here. Again, like I mentioned, you have to attach the actual motor part to the chainstay of your bike, and I think this is what this is for. It just kind of wraps around the motor and secures it to your chainstay. And what's in here? No, it's not Benjamin's. It's just a shifter cable. So a really short one. So you can affix this to the rear derailleur that you're going to use and connect it to the motor system. You got this thing here marked blue, or blem. That's it. This is a blem. And here it is. This is the D1X Trail. So this has the motor which communicates with the shifter. So first impressions, a little bit on the chunky side. Feels kind of like about the size of our Roku remote on the TV, maybe a little bit thicker. But you have to remember it does have to fit these batteries as well as the motor and have a little run for the cable pull. And in the box, they also sent over a battery charger. And lastly, there is a smaller AAA battery, and I believe this is what goes into the shifting mechanism. AA's go into this guy, and the smaller AAA goes into this guy. Okay. Whew, it's cold. Okay, so I'm recharging the batteries right now, and while we're waiting for that to happen, I thought I would give you a couple more close-up views of the shifter and the motor itself. So again, this is the D1X trail, and you can see this is the area where these bands would pass through, and there are some grub screws to tighten them down. That's kind of nice for me because I do plan to put this on a couple bikes on the stand, and one of my big concerns was that it was like a zip tie that once you ratcheted it down, you couldn't take it off. But it looks like with these grub screws, I can take this off and try it on a couple different bikes. Over here, this is where the batteries would go, the ones that are charging in the unit right now. There looks like there is a on button here with some kind of indicator. And if you see this plastic area here, this is where you would put in the cable. So you can see how it's shaped. You would put the cable head in here, cable would pop out here going through some housing, just a really short length that connects to your rear derailleur. And in here is a motor that will move it a set number of times at set distances, which I think is pretty cool. And once you have that in there, then you would close the plastic or this little rubber gasket here. I am finding it is a little tricky to get on perfectly sealed, so just one thing to note. I'm sure there's probably a technique. It would be neat if they could do an integrated battery, maybe slim the unit down just a bit more. But I guess in the process, you would lose the ability to pop these batteries out and put in a fresh pair of new ones, which would be ideal if you're going on a really long ride, bike touring trip, bikepacking trip. Let's take a little bit closer look at the shifter. Again, this is the Paul adapter that will attach this to a 31/8 drop bar, and it's got a kind of nice rubber coating, a little bit of texture there, and it does have a fairly positive clickiness to it, which is kind of nice. I don't know if you can hear this. I'll try to put it up by the mic. So there's definitely some kind of mechanical switch in here. It's not mushy. It does give a nice tactile feedback. There's also a on button here as well as an indicator light. Again, a little bit on the chunky side, but it does have to contain a battery as well as all the wireless goodness in there. I'm going to check on the batteries and see if it is charged enough to play with the app and start getting things paired. Okay, so I've charged up the batteries enough to hopefully get things to function. I can show you what's cool about the setup. First things first is we're going to turn the unit on, so I'm just going to hold this little rubber button here for 2 seconds. Let's see what happens. So I don't know if you heard that, but there was a little motor sound. And now we've got a flashing red light here, which means that it's ready for pairing. Archer has an app that you can download both for iOS and Android. And let's see how it goes. I'm going to actually do a screen capture here and project it on the screen so you can see what this looks like. All right, screen capture in 2, 1. All right, so this is the Archer app, and automatically it sees the D1X shifter. Let's see what happens when you press that. It says it's connecting. Yes, I would like to pair. Let's do a new configuration. It has instructions for loosening the shifter cable at the derailleur. Again, I don't have a cable in here. I just want to mess around with the app and see what the possibilities are. So loosen the shifter cable at the derailleur. No, no cable. Make sure the chain is on the smallest cog. Done. Initialize motor. All right, it made a little sound. I don't know if the mic picked that up. I'll do it again. Cool. Pull any shift cable slack and tighten at the derailleur. Let's pretend that we're doing that. And proceed with Wizard. Whoa, okay. So this is our first kind of option here. We were presented with the number of cogs on the cassette. And check this out, guys. Bam. Backwards compatibility. This is one of the things I am most stoked about. So let's say you have a 9-speed bike or a 10-speed bike and you want to go all E-shifty on the back. You can do it with this system. This will work, at least in theory, with any rear derailleur. Let's say for whatever reason, you know, you had probably not a 1x, but a 3-speed that worked with some kind of cable actuation. I'm thinking an old Sturmy Archer. Wouldn't it just be baller in the craziest way to have a 3-speed electronic shifting bike, and you can do that with a system. So this is what I mean about having a system that's not locked in. You're not necessarily wedded to a particular rear derailleur and its limitations. You can use literally any rear derailleur with the shifting system. So one of the things I'm hoping to try, I don't know how successful I will be, is to actually use this with a Brompton. I mean, how baller would that be to have an e-shifting Brompton? Granted, if you know anything about Bromptons, there is a little length of chain that has to be pulled, so I do have to figure out a way to connect the wire cable to the chain and get it taut enough so that this can actually actuate it. But at least theoretically, this should be able to do it. And again, going through, let's say you've got a bike that's 9-speed. You know, you love 9-speed bikes. You think the chain is super robust. You can do that with this. Let's see how many speeds it'll go up to. Hey, it's future-proof. It's ready for those 20-speed cassettes. Other things I thought where this could be an interesting application is with something like the roll-off, although I don't think it would work with a roll-off because the roll-off uses 2 cables, if I'm not mistaken, so probably not so much with that. But if you do have another IGH hub, something like the Shimano Alfine, that does just use a single cable to pull, then this would probably work with that. I know I posted that I was testing this on the Discord, and someone asked whether or not this could work with a dropper seat post, and I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't see why it couldn't. I'd have to take we'd have to finesse it a little bit, but it could be, you know, you set it at 2 speeds, and between that should pull the cable so you can actuate the seat post and bring it back up. Who knows? We shall see. If you guys think it'll work or you want me to test that, let me know in the comments below. Okay, enough messing around. Let's say I'm going to put it on the Rivendell, which is actually one of the bikes I do want to try this with, because I think it would be absolutely hilarious to have a front derailleur that you shift via friction and a rear derailleur that you shift via the science of Bluetooth and today's technology. Okay, so we've selected a number of gears. Okay, gotcha. So this will get me to this. This looks like it will shift from gear to gear. Just going through the numbers here. Interestingly, not shifting down. And let's see what happens with these buttons. So I can hear the motor working. It is making micro adjustments. I think, you know, clearly you have to have this attached to the actual bike with actual cable and all that to see how it works. Let's say we hit done, disconnect and ride, and then there is a kind of pairing system in which you translate the information that you set up via the app to both these units, and then I don't think you have to touch the app after that unless something goes wrong. The battery for the shift unit is still charging. But I did want to make this video and show you what I'm going to be tinkering with the next couple days. And if you guys have any suggestions on which bike I should put this on, I'm considering the Rivendell because I'd love to see a friction front, electronic shifting rear, or the Crest Bambora, maybe setting it up just, you know, one by. And then perhaps, you know, I'm going to take a closer look at the Sturmy Archer chain and figure out some way to attach it to a cable and maybe do an electronic shifting Brompton. One of the challenges with that is that the chainstay on the Brompton is super short, so I may have to move this to the seat stay or someplace and make sure I don't kick it with my heel. So I think before I close that, we should probably talk price, and it says here on the website the D1X Trail with the standard shifter retails MSRP for $370, $369. I completely understand it is not cheap, but when you compare it to the other electronic shifting options out there, I think this is super reasonable because it's hackable. You can move it from bike to bike to bike. And for me, I like products when it's adaptable to the rest of my fleet and not just married to one bike. So that's one reason why the D1X or just the whole Archer component to ethos is really appealing to me. What you're thinking, why do this at all? There's a couple reasons why you would want to do electronic shifting. Aside from just being an absolute baller, it could be you have limited functionality in a hand. I know as I get older, carpal tunnel becomes more of an issue. I have a friend that does a bunch of endurance gravel racing, and after one particular event, she just could not make this motion anymore. She had wrecked her nerves. But something like this, where it's a simple button push, she could do. So it's great if you have an injury or some kind of adaptability issue. But I also think if you're a tinkerer and you like to scratch that part of your brain, of all the electronic shifting systems out there, this is the only one that will allow you to use it on any rear derailleur. Anything that basically needs a little tug on the cable. Even the dropper posts, we shall see. And before you leave, if you like this content and just the general idea of Party Pace, consider supporting the channel by buying some merch. Yes, I'm in some ways a glorified sticker salesman because AdSense does not pay very well. But everyone that buys a sticker, a patch, who supports us on Patreon, keeps these funky and unique videos coming. I don't think any of the other larger YouTube channels or the big cycling websites are going to go into as much detail into such a quirky product like this. I'm all about it because I like pursuing products that I'm authentically interested in and not just ones that we're paid to talk about. Like I said earlier, yes, I did send this in for review. It is a demo model, but if I do like it, I will end up purchasing. That's it for this video. Help us turn on the Party Pace light, which you cannot see because it's a little bit higher up here. And as always, keep the supple side down.